Everybody, Bernie Wall here. If you don't know me, I'm an IELTS trainer and I help students get band 7 and 8 in their IELTS exam. And we're talking about speaking at the moment. And I'm talking about this because I think it's an area that students often neglect until the last minute. And then it's, whoa, my exam's next week and I haven't done any speaking. And then it's rush, rush, rush to try and do some speaking. It's important with speaking to start right at the beginning so you get plenty of practice. And today I want to talk to you about 3 things that you need to be really good at the speaking. The first is communication, the second is confidence, and the third is language. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about each of those 3 and look at how you can improve them and how they will help you to be really good in the speaking exam if you focus on them. So a few years ago, one of my students took her exam and after the speaking exam, the examiner said to her, you know, this is not just a chat. Now, I was quite surprised when she told me that because normally examiners don't enter into that kind of conversation when the exam's finished. And I'm pretty sure that you've not ever had this experience either. But I think that examiner made a really good point to the student. This is not just a chat. There are certain steps and stages in the speaking that you have to do to demonstrate your ability in different arenas when you're using spoken English. And that's what the exam is set up to test. So this student, she did okay. I think she got 6.5, which is what she wanted. But just think if she'd approached it slightly better, not as a chat, but perhaps as something a little bit more formal, she might have got 7 or even 7.5. So it's worth thinking about how can I best prepare for this exam so that it doesn't end up being just a chat. Okay, so let's look at communication. The purpose of the exam is to test your ability in communication. Now that means that if you make the odd mistake in grammar or pronunciation, it's not the end of the world. It's not a huge deal, so long as you communicate effectively with the examiner. And remember, it's a two-way process. So you need the examiner to ask you questions that you can answer. So don't set off on a big monologue. Now, the better your communication will be if you are able to practice this regularly. And by that, I don't mean just at work. I know a lot of you say to me, oh, but I use English at work. But I've worked with a lot of students over the years. I worked with lots of big multinational companies. And I can tell you that those students who only used English at work had a very limited range of language. Because you are not being asked about your work duties. You're going to be asked about a whole range of different things. And you must be able to communicate effectively in all of those different topics and demonstrate a good knowledge of English language in terms of grammar, vocabulary, and idioms, all of those things. So if you don't practice it, then it's probably not going to be your best performance. So practice does make perfect. The more you practice, the more you retain this language so that when the question comes, you don't have to think too much about what words you want to use. They will just come naturally. So you cannot do the speaking without lots of practice. And that is what communication is, and preferably with other people and preferably about a lot of different topics. The second thing is confidence. Confidence can only come from practice. The better you are, the more confident you are. So you really need to practice this. So get together with friends and other students and practice all parts. In part 2, for example, mostly you're telling a story about something that's happened to you. Everybody likes stories. The examiners like stories. So tell your story. Have a picture in your head of what happened. Tell the story of the events that happened on that day, whatever the topic is. Paint a picture so we can see in our minds. Make it interesting. Who was there? What was the weather like, if that's relevant? How did you feel? How did other people feel? What were their reactions? Give details. The more of the story you tell, the more interesting it will be both to the examiner and also to your score. And the more engaged the examiner will be in what you're saying. So think about it as telling a story. And this will also help your confidence because you were there. You did this. This is all about you. So why can't you tell that? You should be able to tell it very well. And then finally, language. It's about good language, which is why you need to practice. It's about talking about the past. How are your past tenses? If they're not good, practice them, because if you fumble in your past tenses, you're not going to get a good score on telling a story about the past. How are your future tenses? Quite often they ask you about the future, especially in part 3. So you must work on these things, not just in a grammar book, but in speaking. It's really important. How are you at imagining situations? So speculating, thinking about, guessing how something might be. That means modal verbs, conditionals, these kinds of grammatical structures that you'll need to use. The more you practice them, the more they're retained in your memory, the easier they are to recall, the better your communication, and therefore the higher the score. Specific vocabulary. I'm sure you do this for writing. You must do it for speaking as well. Idiomatic language. They expect to hear some of this. I would advise you to use phrasal verbs. If you have 1 or 2 idioms that you know can be used appropriately, that's good. But don't memorize them and just use them willy-nilly. They have to be appropriate. But with phrasal verbs, you can use them all over the place in different situations, so they are worthwhile practicing. But again, in order to get it into your memory, to make it good in your communication, you need to practice, practice, practice. And finally, your pronunciation. That's important too. One of the descriptors is about pronunciation. Record yourself, listen, is it clear? Could somebody understand everything? Are there any words that you're not pronouncing correctly? If not, then practice them. Pronunciation is all about listening, copying, repeating. Listening, copying, repeating. That's how you improve your pronunciation. So if you do all of those things regularly from the beginning of your practice, by the time you get to the exam, there is no reason why you can't do really well in the speaking. And it won't be, as that examiner said, just a chat. Okay, so if you want to get more of this from me, then please come and join my Facebook group. The link is above the video. You're very welcome to come and join. I do more lives about these topics, and there may be opportunities for you to find some speaking partners there that you can work with. So please join my Facebook group and get more and more practice on speaking, but other parts of the test as well. And thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.